Sometimes you hear a sentence, a phrase, and it just sticks with you. That happened to me this past summer. I was having a conversation with a dear friend, a colleague, and he said, "Have you ever noticed that when you press pause on your television, everything stops? But when you press pause on yourself, you start to think." That was the sentence that got me thinking. Pressing pause on your life is when you start to think. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the two pillars of these high holidays, present us with one of those pause moments. In fact, the symbol of the pause button with its two vertical parallel lines can represent these two very pillars. The space between, that's the next 10 days. The 10 days of reflection, of pause that our tradition commands us to take. When we talk about changing our lives, we often use the analogy of a remote control. We talk of rewinding our life to a better time, or fast forwarding to an anticipated future. But in my experience, the remote control button most people wish they had was the pause button. Actually, I think many parents wish they had a mute button. But I know from personal experience, it's a pipe dream. Now, before we talk about the pause button, I want to unpack the other functions we often wish we had a button to control: rewind and fast forward. You know the saying on your side view mirror, objects in mirror may be larger than they appear? I think it's true for many of us. As we move ahead in life, our attention is often drawn to our rear view mirror, to our past, wishing we could go back and either, in the words of the immortal Bruce Springsteen, relive our glory days, or more often address some regret that is weighing down our soul. The attraction of being able to undo our life, rewind to a point when we were happier, when things were simpler, or we had someone in our life who is now gone, is sometimes irresistible. We feel that if we could only go back, the difficulties that we currently find ourselves in would be changed, and we would somehow be able to be happy. In other cases, we hope that we could be able to rewind so that we could undo some of the damage and the hurt that we have caused to other people. Unfortunately, the remote of your soul doesn't have this button. Human beings were never made with a rewind button. You can't go back. Equally true, to live a life filled with regret is not to truly live. I learned this most profoundly from the author Bronnie Ware, a hospice nurse in Australia, who spent hours bedsides of patients, talking to them, listening to their stories. In her conversation, she would ask her patients, "Do you have any regrets?" They answered honestly. They answered with clarity. that comes from knowing that their own death was near. That not only do they not have a rewind button that worked, but when you're in palliative care, you have no remote control at all. God is holding the remote. So Miss Ware wrote this book about these conversations. If you want to check it out, it's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Before I list them, I want you to do something. It's really the whole point of this tonight. Ask yourself, are you living the life that you intended for yourself? If, and God forbid, if you were to die today, would you have any deep personal regrets? And I'm not talking about the bucket list items, skydiving or traveling to an exotic locale, learning to cook a good Indian curry. My question is deeper. It's more personal. If you could change anything about your life before it's too late, what would it be? Now, the 5 most common answers that Miss Ware heard to these questions were these. Number 1, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Is your life in line with your values? The High Holy Days implore us to examine our lives, to look at our past year and all of the past years and ask ourselves, am I being true to myself? Now, I recognize that many of us can't answer that in the affirmative. So often, we live our lives in terms of what others expect of us. And for some, we're not sure anymore who we are truly intended to be. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. She heard this regret from every male patient and every working woman she cared for. She said they missed their children's youth and their partner's companionship. They regretted the long hours spent in the office doing tasks they thought was important instead of being home for dinner, attending a child's performance, or spending time with family and friends. Clayton Christensen, a professor at Harvard School of Business, wrote about the model of how to avoid the regret, this one in particular. He explains that in life, like in business, each of us come with limited resources, time, energy, talent, and wealth. With every moment of our time, every decision about how we spend our energy, our talent, our money, we are making a statement about what really matters to us. If the decision you make about where to invest your blood, your sweat, and your tears are not consistent with the person you aspire to be, you'll never become that person. And number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. The first principle of language in Judaism is that it is creative. God spoke, and the world came into being. We too create by speaking, and we create when we refrain from speaking. In the refraining, we sometimes create regret, the things that were left unsaid, the feelings that we suppressed, the kind word that we were too angry or too self-centered to give. I guess in some ways, this is also a mute button, knowing when to hold our tongue and when to open our mouth, when to press mute, and when to turn up the volume. If it was only as easy as pressing a button. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. As we rewind the tape of our lives, each of us can point to 1 or 2 relationships or friendships that we unintentionally neglected when life got busy. We hope that the bonds of friendship are strong enough to endure such neglect, but they seldom are. Even the most committed friends stick around only for so long before they choose to invest their own time, energy, and friendship elsewhere. Because when they do, the loss is ours, not theirs. And number 5, I wish that I had let myself be happier. The path to happiness in life and relationship is not just about finding someone who you think is going to make you happy. It's about finding someone who you want to make happy. Someone whose happiness is worth devoting yourself to. Bring happiness to another, and I promise you'll find it for yourself. But as we well know, you can't rewind your life. It's why the choices we make in the present about how we live our life and how we spend our time is so important. Now, the other button for the remote for your soul is the button that we don't have, the fast forward. I know we wish we did. We'd love to just push a button and skip past difficult circumstances into a time which we are sure will be happier, more rewarding, easier than the times that we're currently living in. And it can be agonizing to us that we are unable to jump forward into the future. It's the great paradox of life. We spend our childhood in a hurry to get older, and we spend our later years wishing we were younger, longing for the flexibility of body and circumstance that age and responsibility has taken away from us. Even without this button, this fast-forward button, sometimes it feels, though, that life is moving at 2 times speed or even 3 times speed. We're rushing so much, skipping so many important moments as we move from one to the next. There's a story in our tradition. A rabbi once observed a man hurrying along the street, looking neither right nor left. "Why are you rushing so?" he asked him. "I'm after my livelihood," the man replied. "And how do you know," continued the rabbi, "that your livelihood is running on before you so that you have to rush after it? Perhaps it's behind you. And all you have to do to encounter it is to pause and stand still." And in that is where we find the beautiful teaching that we encounter the most powerful button on the remote control for the soul. The button that really only exists, which is the pause button. Because when you press pause on yourself, you begin to think. When we take time to pause and examine what's happening to us and how we feel we can sometimes see our life in vivid detail and understand what's really going on. When we press pause on life, the process of introspection begins. It can be revealing. It can also be calming. Because sometimes the pause consists of moments to smell the roses. And sometimes that pause is spent with time with family. Sometimes that pause consists of days spent playing. And sometimes that pause is a longer one to heal the wounds that we may have sustained in our own journey. Terry Hershey wrote in her book, "While striving for perfection, we pass on ordinary. While rushing for better, we don't give our best effort to good. While yearning for the new and improved, we leach the joy right out of the old and reliable." He suggests that we pause and we notice the ordinary moments. They are morsels of joy hidden deep within. So these two high holy days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, separated as they are, looking like a pause button in our lives, teach us the importance of focusing attention on the in-between moments, the pauses between breaths, the pauses between thoughts, the pause between the end of the year and the start of another. Those pauses are where we find our true selves. Because deep within ourselves, there is a knowing that we are at peace, not needing to look back and rewind or jump fast forward, but that we are worthy just as we are in this moment right now. We are worthy of loving ourselves fully, warts and all. Life is worthy of a joyful feeling, even with all the sad moments. There are precious moments right in front of us that are waiting to be embraced. When you press pause, you will see them. Tara Brach writes that through the sacred art of pausing, we develop the capacity to stop hiding, to stop running away from our own experience. We begin to trust in our natural intelligence, in our naturally wise heart, in our capacity to open to what arises. By pressing the pause button on life, we give ourselves the space to realign with our values, our vision, to reconnect with our inner voice, our true selves. When we hit pause, we're able to perfectly freeze that frame, and examine our life from every angle. Our life, our world is becoming one that wants to continually to drive forward without thought for our own well-being. We need the next new thing, the latest update, the latest upgrade. Life is coming at us so fast. In this new year, starting tonight, in these 10 days between the two pillars, give yourself some breathing space. Take a time out. Press pause on life. It's the only button we have. Press it and see what happens. I suspect you'll start to think about everything you are doing. Kini Hiratson, may this be God's will as we say, Amen.